Hello everyone and welcome to something new and I think pretty exciting for Jurassic World Evolution. Something that I hope you'll enjoy building and adding to your own dinosaur parks. A petting zoo slash walkthrough dinosaur enclosure. The idea comes from a comment left on a video of mine and my first response was, oh, it's such a cool idea, but it's not possible. Any and all dinosaurs will freak out the guests. It actually wasn't until like a day or two later when a very simple solution popped into my head, and then I spent like half an hour scouring through the comments to find this one comment so I could give proper credit. Now, to build this petting zoo or walkthrough enclosure in Jurassic World Evolution, you will need the two following mods: the expanded path, pylons and fences mod, and the invisible fences mod. I will be showing you two versions, two different approaches, so stick around for the alternative version as well. After that, I hope you will enjoy adding these to your own parks. The first version I will be showing you uses the Innovation Center as the entry point to our petting zoo slash walkthrough enclosure. Am I gonna say that every single time? Probably not. So what I did was I made like a little starting area with just regular visible path, which is going to stay visible. And right now what I'm doing is I'm sort of going to make like an irregular sort of natural path through what is going to be our exhibit. And as you'll see, I'm using visible path, but only so I can actually see what I'm doing. If you start out right away with the invisible path, you're going to make this very hard on yourself. Way harder than it needs to be. As you can see, if you make it invisible, it's really invisible. It leaves nothing behind. I used a wider path for this one. For the alternative, I will be using a skinnier path, so keep that in mind. That's one of the differences between the two versions. But for this one, I went with the thick path. And obviously, the next step is to outline it with fences. And again, I'm using a visible fence, but this will be replaced later. Now, one of the key things you have to do is add buildings so guests will actually come out here. Remember, there's no visibility on path, so guests will not recognize that there are actually dinosaurs in this exhibit, which is why I'm adding like a little cafe, a shop, and I'm even going to be adding a little restaurant and a viewing gallery at the far end of the path of the exhibit, just to ensure that a lot of guests will be attracted into this area. Again, I'm just continuing with the outline and doing that with visible fence so I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, so now what I'm working on is the little restaurant section that I mentioned earlier. I'm just placing down path, you know, how I like it. Obviously, you can take any approach you want to this. I just felt like I came up with something that I felt like would make sense, I guess. It would make sense as a standalone thing, because obviously at the end of this it's going to look like it's just out in the middle of nowhere. I added two bathrooms because, I don't know, dinosaurs are exciting, okay? They make you need to pee, whatever. I made a slightly less severe curve over here just so that the intersection was a little bit bigger, because obviously what we're going to end up with are three separate exhibits. One in between the path and one exhibit on either side of it, so three in total. And of course at the very end, which I will be adding a little bit later, will be sort of our official exhibit with the viewing gallery to attract our guests to it. Alright, so this is an important step, making the fences invisible. This is why you need that mod. This really creates that illusion that the guests are walking in an enclosure with dinosaurs instead of being fenced off as they usually are. So this is where I had the idea of, okay, a restaurant and a couple of bathrooms isn't going to attract the audience that I need to make it look a little bit crowded. So that's why I'm adding a viewing gallery, and I'm actually going to be putting some fairly big ticket dinosaurs in that exhibit to really drive traffic towards that area. Just a little simple path flare. Is it really worthy of the word? Not really, but just something at the front. And then the next step will be to actually create the outside perimeter of this enclosure to ensure that the dinosaurs will not escape. That's not an unimportant detail. You know, if you want to live your life in anarchy, that's fine, but that's not necessarily what we're going for right now. Alright, so I've done the shape of the exhibit off camera. It's not important. As you can see, it's walled in. Everything is enclosed. So here I'm making the paths invisible. That's possible thanks to the expanded paths, pylons, and fences mod. And now, basically what you're just gonna do, and you can do this however you like, you're going to make essentially 3 exhibits, but in the end it has to look like one cohesive exhibit, because obviously the fences are invisible, and you want to create that illusion that dinosaurs can actually cross over the path when in reality they can't. So I'm just doing, you know, basic exhibit work. You can do this however you want. So I made the separate exhibit. That's where dinosaurs like Triceratops, Apatosaurus, and even the highest possible rated Brachiosaurus is going to live. Again, that's just to ensure that a lot of people are actually coming out onto this path. This is a hint at something you'll see a little bit later. You can just make the path completely disappear. I'm gonna do that for the alternative version. For this version, what I really liked was actually to highlight the path, and I did that with, well, I did dirt first, but then I realized, yeah, that just looks like dinosaur poo smeared all over the place. I didn't like the look of this, so as you can see I replaced it with sand, and I did like how that turned out. So that's what I'm sticking with. But again, for the alternative, we'll be hiding the path completely. Again, just more exhibit work. You can do this however you like. I didn't want to add too many trees, so I went maybe a little bit too hardcore on the shrubbery tool over here. What's interesting, as you can see, is that the invisible path actually allows you to place shrubbery on the path itself. So that's pretty cool about this mod. So guests are actually walking through the shrubbery. It all just adds to the illusion. I'm really not doing like my absolute best on this exhibit. Obviously it was just to sell the idea. It's not actually part of a park, which is a good thing, by the way, because I might as well tell you that I do not advise building on Sorna. I'm building this on Sorna. I cannot get back into this save file. It simply will not load. So one of the mods that I am using is preventing me from doing that. I tested it on other islands. It only seems to be on Sorna. So keep that in mind. But before you try this idea, I suggest you just test to make sure you can still get back into the save file before you do too much work. So just place down an invisible fence, an invisible path, save, and load back into it. See if you can get back into it. Right away on Sorna, that didn't work for me. On the other islands, it did. So that's just a little... Maybe avoid Sorna for now. I haven't figured out which of the mods it actually is, but that's just a little warning from me. Right now what I'm doing is I'm just checking which signs there are, because I criminally neglect using the sign, so I oftentimes forget. So I added, I think, ornithomimid sign at the start, and here I'm using Triceratops sign because that's something I knew I was going to add. Now what I'm doing over here, which is pretty smart in my opinion, I added a fake path. This is not something that the guests can use, but it adds to the illusion that guests and dinosaurs can intermingle, because the dinosaurs can walk over that fake path. Anyway, we're moving straight into the alternative version, and that utilizes one of the main selling points of the expanded paths, pylons, and fences mod, which is that you can attach... he went crazy over there. But you can attach your path to your fences, and that way guests can walk into an enclosure without the need for the Innovation Center. But I wanted to show it with the Innovation Center first, because that was the suggestion from the comments, and I actually really like how that looks. It makes it even more of an attraction, that you first have to go into a building and then back out into an exhibit. I really like that, but this is also a very good way to do it. And we're going to be repeating a lot of the steps from before. Also, what I'm going to be adding is an exhibit on the other end. I'm going to be dropping a high-rated Tyrannosaur in there. Tyrannosaurus, sorry. What you can also do is just literally put one half of the park on one end of this exhibit and the other half on the other, which also forces traffic to go through this walkthrough exhibit. Now, as I said, we are going to be doing this differently in the end, but for starting out, I just wanted to show you the exact same thing I did before. So I'm making it invisible, ding, 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 ding. There you go. So for starters, I am going to be outlining the path with sand again, as you can see over here, just making the brush really small. So I'm doing the same thing I did before, but I will be changing that just so you can see in a park or in an exhibit, you can see a real example of the difference that it makes, and you can decide for yourself which look you like best. Alright, so I've done my terrain work, and now I'm going to show you what it looks like if you erase all of it, essentially. If you make it one complete terrain texture and the path completely disappears. Now, I didn't wait around long enough for guests to actually appear, spawn into this exhibit. So I don't have footage of them walking around, but I do imagine it's going to be quite interesting because with how the path is laid out really windy and random, it really just looks like people are meandering through an exhibit on their own accord without any sort of restrictions or guidelines. They're just completely free in an exhibit. Now, what I would recommend for like dinosaur editions in an enclosure like this are dinosaurs that, you know, reasonably would not pose a threat to our guests. So, Homalocephali, Drysaurus, I added Nigersaurus. I figured, you know, that'd be like a gentle giant sort of approach to it. So that's the kind of dinosaurs I would recommend for an enclosure like this to really sell the believability of it. And that's it. I really hope you enjoyed watching this petting zoo slash walkthrough exhibit, and I hope you will incorporate it in your own parks. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, enjoy the game.